So Thomas, welcome to our Seven Habits class, and tell us a little bit about your job.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. My name is Thomas, and I graduated Cal Poly in March 2020, right at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I currently work as a technology risk consultant at Ernst & Young. And I mainly serve one main client in San Francisco, and that is Lyft, the rideshare company. And so I work with a pretty large team doing some really interesting sort of SOX compliance. And I have an accounting and finance background from Cal Poly. So if anyone doesn't know, SOX is Sarbanes-Oxley, and that was an act in 2001 that sort of made it a lot harder for companies. And so they kind of hire us consultants to come in and fix and sort of tinker with their business processes so that they can be compliant. And that's really around internal controls. So that's mainly my job.
Thomas, I'm glad you explained the socks thing, because otherwise, I was starting to look at my feet, and being compliant or not. So great to have you here, Thomas, and it's good to see you here. We did. I'm thinking back to that. We were also online, but I also allowed. We had a conference room, and there was usually about 3 of us that sort of met every time physically in person while the other people were in line. It was nice to see you in person. So now I'm seeing you virtually. But so tell us a little bit about your education career journey, and how you got to where you are, and how did the 7 Habits stuff sort of fold into that?
Definitely. So my sort of career at Cal Poly was sort of all over the place. I kind of came into Cal Poly in the business school not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I sort of stumbled upon the accounting program at Cal Poly and got very involved with that, and joined the Cal Poly Accounting Club and became an officer on that club for 2 years, and had decided sort of my junior year before taking this class that I was going to do auditing, and that's sort of something that everyone did and focused on when they were involved in accounting, and that was sort of the best path to go, and sort of had all the accolades of, you can pivot to any place you want to go. You can join a big 4 accounting firm, and then you kind of have all your ducks in a row. And so that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I had a junior year internship and went through that, and sort of halfway along that internship, realized that wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so in order to sort of change the position and the place that I wanted to be, I kind of had to sort of take a more proactive step and really reach out and pivot into the career that I wanted to do. And I had a really good manager at the time who sort of sat me down and told me, hey, I think you're doing a great job, but I don't think this job is for you. I think it will kill your soul. And that you have a lot more spirit and more of a creative mind. I think you should really look within the consulting side, because I see that you really like helping people and you like to sort of solve problems. So that's sort of where I pivoted. And in my senior year, when I was taking this class, I really didn't know what I was going to do, and sort of the 7 Habits and really learning all about this really helped me in figuring out sort of how to really be really introspective and think, okay, this is something I want to do, and I'm going to take action and sort of pursue the career that I want to do. And so I re-recruited and found myself sort of still in the big 4 accounting firms, but on the consulting side. And I sort of really love what I do, and working sort of with large companies and feeling like I'm making a tangible difference, because every day is always sort of not the same, and there's always sort of those big rocks that feel super urgent in the moment, but they sort of slip into the next weeks, and we continue to get rehired, and our project that was supposed to be about a year has extended to 3 years, just because there's more work and there's more things that we're finding to improve, and we're doing such a great job that they sort of extended our contract. So
cool. Thomas, can you share with, I know you attended my class, but, that wasn't necessarily your first exposure to Seven Habits. Maybe you can share a little bit of that.
Yeah, definitely. I actually I have it next to me. So this I have my Seven Habits book, and my father was really big on the Seven Habits, and he actually got to meet Stephen Covey and hear him speak, and got fairly close with him during his sort of time before he passed away. And so my dad really loved the Seven Habits, and he has used it in his entire career, and he's currently the CEO of a large company called Bob's Discount Furniture. And the Seven Habits definitely has a role in that. And so even from a young age, I think it must have been my first year of college, and my dad handed me this exact book and told me to read it. And because I was sort of lost in what I wanted to do in college, and he sort of guided me, and that was my first exposure to Seven Habits. And then when I saw this class, it was definitely something that I knew I wanted to take and get sort of more enriched experience in understanding the Seven Habits, because I think you can read the book once and you can understand what the Seven Habits are, but the more you talk about it with people, and the more you engage with people that sort of understand the same lingo, it's sort of an ever practicing thing, and you keep renewing your knowledge and understanding of what the Seven Habits are, and they change sort of as you grow up and you progress in your career, and what habit might be important in the moment.
Changes. Hey, so is Ernst and Young like a Seven Habits place? Like how does what you learn, apply in your job and your sort of daily work at this time?
Yeah, I would say, I've talked with a bunch of my coworkers about the Seven Habits, and I've given presentations actually about the Seven Habits, and I've pulled PowerPoint slides together and sort of created an experience for other coworkers to really pinpoint different habits and different team building and personal development. And that's something that I found a love for when I was at Cal Poly. And so I got really involved with leadership classes while at Cal Poly, and had a really good experience there. So I wanted to bring that resource to Ernst and Young. And I definitely say or think that a lot of the habits really apply, day to day in a team environment. And when you work a lot with other people, there's sort of that break between the habits of being the independence and the interdependence, and a lot of the interdependent habits really come to play. And I don't think you guys have gotten there yet, but a lot of the seek first to understand and be understood, and the synergize habit really come to be really applicable when you're working sort of on big dynamic teams, and wanting to kind of have all the teams synergize, and really understanding how you can understand and really promote your team members so you all can sort of reach a common goal is really important.
Right. So Thomas, it's fascinating that you've even sort of stepped up in that corporate setting and talk to people about Seven Habits. Were these, can you describe a little bit, are these formal presentations? Was this like a lunch and learn? Was it, you were probably on Zoom, I imagine, when you're talking to people, and you just, where'd you get the slides, and what did that look like? And by the way, were the people forced to be there, or were they volunteers, or?
Yeah, so for my experience, it's been both sort of formal presentations and then also lunch and learns. So my team specifically, given that we're sort of in a consulting team and we all have different backgrounds, but I have an accounting and finance background. I work with people that have strong IS backgrounds, computer science, sort of all different hosts of majors that, everybody comes to the table to sort of bring their ideologies and sort of pass their knowledge along. And so Seven Habits was something that I wanted to bring to the table. And that was in an informal lunch and learn that, about once a month, we'll try to meet as a team and have sort of that lunch and learn that's expensed. And, everybody sort of comes to the meeting, and there's one person that's going to present on some relevant information that could help the team and move us to sort of our target points. And then on a more formal level, I've given presentations to interns or to sort of new onboards that I like to incorporate the 7 habits in terms of the work that I'm doing. Whereas, kind of what you were talking about with the quadrants, I'll sort of do that in my day to day and really organize. I'll do about once a week where I have a running sprint schedule where I'll sort of prioritize and figure out, okay, these are the things that I have in terms of work. These are the things that I have in my personal life. And here's sort of my calendar of what I need to do for the week. And I'll try to place those into different quadrants and think about it so that I can, tackle all the urgent pieces that I need, sort of avoid the distractions, and then sort of move towards those quadrant 2 items. And for the longest time, one of those quadrant 2 items was the CPA. And that was something that I just recently completed, and I had started right as I graduated about 1.5 years ago, and I just finished that up. And if people aren't familiar, the CPA, the certification for being a certified public accountant, and it's 4 different tests. They're each 4 hours. It takes about 200 to 750 hours to study for each of them, and usually take about 4 months per test. And so it's a pretty involved process, and yeah, it definitely takes a lot of time after work.
So Thomas, I want to encourage our the student audience to go ahead and pop in some questions so that I'm not the only one driving the conversation here, because I want to take it towards what the students feel like they need to know. And this is an opportunity too, from the fact that you're a relatively recent graduate, and you're trying to apply some of these ideas. But when you're, I kind of lost my places where I was going to go with this question. But I know what it was. Is it kind of sounds like you're becoming like the 7 habits guy, in your consulting group. Is it, are you becoming like known for that, or like, oh, here comes that 7 habits guy again? Or it sounds like when you're doing your presentation, you weren't presenting on Sarbanes-Oxley, but.
Yeah, no, I would say that a lot of people, have attributed me to that, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But I have come across a lot of other people that have either read the book in a class, or for recommendations from family or friends, or just sort of have picked it up as a good read. So there's a lot of people that are very familiar with it. And so it makes it pretty easy when sort of giving these presentations and presenting my sort of spin on how I see the 7 habits and how they apply sort of in our consulting environments, that people will come to the table and be like, oh, I read that book a long time ago. I haven't thought about these habits, and you can exchange ideas about how you apply the habits and how people can best leverage them for success. So.
Yeah, Thomas, I don't know if you remember in the class, but one of the things we try to do is not only the 7 habits certainly runs throughout, but then there's also different leadership models, that we sort of try to integrate into the course. But then I find the nice thing about 7 habits, as you seem to have found also, it's a good common language that lots of people seem to be familiar with, and it sort of resonates. So it becomes a little bit of a shorthand, and talking about how they apply in your particular business context seems to be a useful thing.
Most definitely. I know when I was going and entering the workforce, my dad reminded me that he sort of always requires his executives to read the 7 habits. So upon them starting a position at his company, he'll send them the 7 habits book, and that's something that he'll start off every sort of executive board meeting with some quote from the 7 habits, and it becomes sort of a corporate culture and a common language amongst those who work for him. So he, sort of instilled in me the importance of it, and it's been really awesome to be able to engage with other people and exchange ideas, because my thoughts and feelings about one of the habits might be completely different from yours, and you can sort of learn from each other and continue to move towards a better common goal for yourself and others. So.
Yeah. So so I want to once again encourage some of our student members here to choose, be proactive and ask a question. that'd be sort of a nice thing. I'm watching the chat, and you can type in the chat your question, and I'll ask you to read it out or something, so the camera switches over to you. But Thomas, is there one of the habits that you thought is sort of particularly useful, in this transition from student to gainfully employed member of society, for you?
Yeah, I mean, I am constantly striving to be better about the first habit of being proactive, because it's something that, especially in a COVID environment, that there's so many things that I want to do, but trying to find the time and sort of with my job and the demands of that, make it really hard to sort of be able to prioritize and taking sort of ownership over my life and my career. And I can constantly sort of get not held back, but sort of my time taken up by the work obligations that I have. And so sort of taking initiative of, okay, I want to do this, and I'm going to set this goal to do this, has been really important to figuring out sort of in navigating sort of life post-college and still in the very thick of COVID.
Sure. Let's go first with Nathan. Nathan, you want to go ahead and ask your question? I see we got some other questions in the chat too.
Yeah, my question for Thomas was, when you were in your senior year and you were coming off an internship at one of the big accounting firms, but you didn't see that maybe it would be the most satisfying for you for like a purposeful career, what were some of the ways that you're able to pivot and become self-aware and really introspective about your decision-making process as far as what you wanted to do and how you would align yourself with purposes outside of or in your career and outside of your career?
Excellent. Nice question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, for me, it was really thinking, and I got sort of challenged from having a really great manager who wanted my best interests in mind. And so it wasn't really for her, hey, you're great and we want to retain you and make sure you sign with our company because you're great. She really wanted to take a approach of, okay, I see that this is probably not something that you will like long term, that you'll be pretty good at it, but it won't be something that will fulfill you. And so she really probed me to think about that, and I owe her greatly for that. But on my side, it was really being extremely communicative with what I wanted to do and what I saw this job being. And so I spent the majority of my internship going to lunches with people, interacting, sort of setting time and taking that proactive step of, I would just schedule calls with people. And at that time, it wasn't COVID, so I was going to lunches and getting coffee and just putting time on people's calendars to ask them questions and pick their brain about what they did and whether that was something that I could see myself doing in the future. And so for me, upon sort of acquiring all that information and hearing that feedback and talking with my manager, it wasn't something that I saw myself doing for the foreseeable future. And so that's when I knew, even though everybody else was going to sign their offers and I was the only one that turned it down, having that clear goal in mind and being, okay, I want to do this and this is where I see my life heading. And let me talk to all of these advisors. Let me, have, important conversations with myself that, I want a job that I can be fulfilled in and be proud of and be challenged in. And this wasn't going to be that job. And, there's, some people are,
Yeah, Thomas, it sounds like this manager, we had just sort of learned about being a transition person, for other people in your life. And it sounds like this manager was a transition person for you. Really, right? So we got some other questions. Let's go ahead and get it on. Lewis, you want to pop on and ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like now that you're working full time, like how heavy would you say your course load is? Because I know like at Cal Poly, it's like everyone says 25 to 30 hours a week, but like I'm wondering compared to like the 40-hour work week, how much of a change that is for you?
Yeah. So for me, and this is just the nature of sort of the job that I signed up for, but consulting can have wild hours depending on the project that you're on. And I'm on sort of a long-term project, and I'm staffed for 45 hours a week, which is typically a 9 to 6, but I don't think I've ever worked 45 hours a week. I've always worked more because things come up, and on my team, I've sort of carved out a little piece of the pie, so to speak, of things that I sort of specialize in. And one of those things on my account is sort of the insurance practice. And I've gotten really involved and ingrained. So when issues come up there, I'm sort of the person that everyone goes to for that. So for me, it really has ranged from being a little bit more than 45 hours to sometimes I've worked up to 80 or 90 hours, and it really depends on the week. But I have a really supportive team, and my firm is really supportive too. And we sort of have moved to the sort of new wave of PTO where it's sort of unlimited, and it's really a team-based conversation where I can take as many days as I want. I just need to communicate, and that's sort of one of those pieces about being proactive that when I joined, I gave them sort of the time that I wanted to take off for the next 6 months, and got that bulk approved. And a lot of people do it that way, so that you kind of know that there's going to be waves of work, and your team is really important to letting you know sort of when those waves are. And I try to take at least a week after each big wave to go somewhere. So our next big wave concludes in September, and so I'm taking a week and going to Hawaii, and then we'll have sort of the Christmas break, and then I'll be up in Lake Tahoe with my family and going on another trip. So in my experience, it's a lot more work, sort of the day to day than it was at Cal Poly, and that's sort of the nature of the work that I'm in. But at the same time, I feel equally rewarded by having that time off where I can fully and truly disconnect. And I never felt as a student that I could ever fully disconnect, because I always had midterms or finals or whatnot and studying to do. But sort of full time, once you sort of shut down your computer, you can kind of enjoy your free time.
Good for you. Hey, let's see. So we've got one more question from Oliver. Oliver, we're going to make this the wrap-up question here. So why don't you go ahead and pop on and ask Thomas a question?
Hey, Thomas. Thanks for coming on. I was wondering, what sort of ways do you apply the public victory habits at work or in your personal life? And if you've noticed the benefits of applying them in in the people that you're around, like have you seen fruits of your labor?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely would say that I have. In a work context, there's sort of team goals and mutual victories that we sort of run towards, and we have sort of benchmarks, and I have personal benchmarks, and the team has benchmarks. And I actually left sort of a team happy hour and a conclusion of a latest sort of milestone that we hit right before coming here. So the whole team, there's about 20 of us, we all were on a Zoom happy hour, sort of had a Kahoot where somebody made where we just had sort of fun facts and funny stories, and sort of all ate dinner together online. And so, applying those, I guess, public victory habits, there's many ways that you can do that. And for me, I really enjoy I have 2 interns right now that are working under me, and they've been absolutely phenomenal. And so just recognizing and valuing, other people's hard work, and really understanding that, as an intern, given that I really wanted people to be very open and transparent with me, I try to be as transparent and open with the interns as possible, and not really, hey, you should work here because everything's great, but hey, sometimes things are hard and sometimes things are difficult, but here's the value added that you'll get by doing this job. Here's the things that, hopefully when you come to the firm, if you choose to do, can make a difference, because each sort of new wave of people that come can sort of shift and change the culture. And so, trying to pass along my knowledge and things I wish I knew when I started along to others.
Yeah. And it sounds like, you know, that public victory is, you know, built on a very solid foundation of the private victory. Thomas, it's good to kind of see still practicing this, and thank you so much for coming here and talking to students tonight. Could you, so one last sort of parting shot, do you have any like words of wisdom for folks just starting out on their 7 habits journey, before we go ahead and let you go?
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say that for me, when I took this class, I didn't realize how much of an impact it would have on me sort of in the working world. And it's really, you know, it's a habit for a reason. It's something that you sort of need to practice, you know, if not daily, then weekly, and something, you know, that I try to remind myself of. And I sort of built those certain habits where, whether it be in my work environment, where I'll build sort of that weekly sprint plan, or in my personal life where I'll sort of organize my priorities. It's something that you need to continue to do. And the more that you do it, the better that you get. So they're not really useful if you just sort of read them in a book and never think about it again. And really, you need to sort of take action and be proactive and sort of executing those items. And that was something that when I had sort of my personal journal that I took in this class, it's something that I still have and I've thought about, and doing sort of those exercises made me sort of spurred my thought in executing those and taking different practices. So.
All right, good. Well, Thomas, thank you so much once again. Hopefully you're now permanently on my celebrity invite list. So we'll get you back, and, you know, if we kind of check in over the years, we'll see you evolve.